What's up, friends? Welcome back to Rooted Wisconsin, where we are dedicated to authentically sharing the stories of the people who drive Wisconsin culture. I'm going to start this episode off the same way we do everyone, thanking you. Thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, engaging with our content wherever you do it. We appreciate you. Thanks for being there. We make the content for you, and really looking forward to year number 2 as we get into year number 2 of Rooted Wisconsin. Shout out today to our sponsor, Riverside Pizzeria here in Green Bay. Stop in and get yourself the best pizza in Wisconsin. It's hands down. It's non-disputed that it's the best pizza in Wisconsin. Get cheese out. Been talking about the pepperoncinis, so you learned about those. The sausage is really good too. It's all good, but eventually you just have to try every one. So shout out to Ryan and his crew at Riverside Pizzeria stopping in Ashwaubenon, and some growth plans in the future. So watch out for a Riverside Pizzeria near you, wherever you're watching. And thank you to our friends at Wonder Sign as well, here in Green Bay, right on Velp, for turning my vehicle into the Rooted Wisconsin mobile. Appreciate that. And some nice laptop stickers and a bunch of other cool hats too. Awesome hats. So get at us on social media or send me a message if you want to get your hands on one of the Rooted Wisconsin hats. So thank you to them. And of course, thank you to Discover Green Bay for some awesome studio space as we get our episode started. Today, I'm excited to welcome our guest, Sarah Conery. Thanks for coming in, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to chat. It seems like you live an adventurous life.
Yeah, that's one way of saying it.
Yeah. So travel content creator, recent author, and all around just jack of all fun trades, it seems.
Yeah, I like to do things that are entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk about this book right away, and then I've got a bunch of stuff I want to get into. So 100 Things to Do in Green Bay Before You Die.
Yes.
I want to ask about the title first. How'd you come up with Before You Die?
Well, it's a series book. So my
Okay.
publisher, I was not allowed to choose the title, but I was writing the series book for them. So they have this series for different states and cities across the U.S. So I didn't have any creative decision on the title.
Gotcha. You were told the
Yeah,
title.
I was like, they were like, you can write this, but the title stays and the formatting is on us. And I was like, okay,
Okay.
I can get behind that.
Nice. And this is your first book, right? This is the first
Yes.
time becoming a published author?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like? Intimidating?
Chaotic.
Yeah.
Very chaotic. It was fun, but it also, this is probably the biggest project that I've written. It's 160 pages, so it was a lot. But I would say the writing wasn't necessarily the most challenging part. It was choosing what went in the book, because there are so many amazing things in our area. Choosing only 100 was really hard for me, especially when there are so many businesses doing great things that deserve to be in the book that I had to limit it to 100, which was really hard.
Yeah. How much, did you have full creative control over that?
I did, yeah. So I was allowed to choose everything that went in the book, but some of the formatting, I wanted to sneak in some more things. So I had some sections that I was trying to do, like shop at women's boutiques, and then listing them in the main feature. And they were like, please choose one. So there were some that we had to go back and forth on, and I was like, but they're all really important.
Yeah.
They were like, please choose one for the formatting, for consistency, please choose one. So I did have to adjust some.
One, the 100th thing subtext D dot.
There's actually about 170 things in the book because I was able to add lists. So I would list a great coffee shop, and then I'd list other places to grab coffee. So I was creative in adding in some extra lists. So there's a list for coffee shops, for where to eat cheese curds, women's boutiques, and there's more. There's where to go get craft beer and drink wine are also. So they're all lists with a bunch of places.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So let's, before we get too far into that, let's step back and talk about being a travel. It started as a blog, right? And
Yep.
then grew outside into social media. How long have you been doing that?
Yeah, I started the blog in December of 2019. So we're going on 5 years.
What a weird time to start a travel blog.
It was poor timing. It was really poor timing. I did travel for the first few months. And then as COVID started to happen, I went to lifestyle. So there's
Okay.
a lot of random articles on my site about doing gift baskets and self-care and things like that, because I shifted from travel to focus on more relevant things, and now I've shifted back to travel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what made you decide to start doing it? How'd you land on being a content creator? Did it start as like a side thing, or how'd you get there?
Yeah, I knew that I wanted to start a blog, or at least I thought it was the coolest thing ever. When I was fresh out of high school, I was like, that's iconic. I want to do that someday. Didn't think I had anything interesting to write about. So we're like, we're going to wait until we just live a little, have some experience in life to be able to write. And then I went and I studied in Scotland, and then I came back. So I was like, okay, that's cool. People might want to hear about this, so you can start writing. So that's kind of how I started writing the blog. I started creating content online to promote the blog, and then I found out quickly that I'm better at content creation than at blogging.
Okay.
Because it's a very intense process to get started in, because there's so many things that you have to learn. And as someone who didn't really have a mentor or anyone that I knew that was doing what I was doing, it was a lot of Google searching and trying to figure out how to make it work. So I started promoting it on social media, and that actually took off better than the blog did. So I shifted focus.
Nice. Yeah. Blogging is taxing. Actually a lot like podcasting. It's a really slow burn that
Yes.
and there's so many nuanced ways to write. I know fantastic writers that aren't very good bloggers, and I know great bloggers that really aren't that great of writers.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting thing. So do you still blog?
I do, not as much.
Okay.
I'm hoping to, now that I have an audience, be able to shift back and add more to my blog. But I really have been focusing on content creation probably the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to shift back into blogging. But yeah, blogging is very interesting in the sense that you have to write so it's human and interesting enough, but still good for SEO.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like that balance of what is helpful for readers and what will actually show up in search results. So it's its own thing. You got to find your groove of what makes people keep coming back to read more.
Yeah, definitely. What never keeps me coming back but works is the recipe blogs when you have to scroll through the endless amount of options. I love when they have the jump to recipe button, because then you just, boom, I'm there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get what you mean. So how long would you say you blogged before you started doing the content, and then how did you tip the scales and be like, okay, I'm going to do this more?
Yeah, I was probably blogging. I really was blogging more in the first year than I have since, which is probably not. It's probably a little opposite if you think about blogging and how you have to add content constantly, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But I probably was blogging a lot more in the first year, and then just started the Instagram and was just kind of posting here and there when I would have something interesting to share. And then I started getting to the point where I was just on Instagram so much. And that was really also during COVID. I feel like I didn't have a lot going on, so I was on social media a lot more and trying to just look for things for entertainment mainly. But I was just on there a lot more. So I found different sections and communities of people who are posting a lot about travel, and that's what I missed so much during COVID. So I feel like I posted a lot more because it was remember when
Mm-hmm.
we could travel and we could be all these places. So then I did try and post more travel on the Instagram, and that is kind of more where the growth came from. And as soon as I started seeing growth, I was like, I can do this. I just have to keep it up. I just have to keep going. So yeah, It was more so seeing growth from it and then focusing more on that, and then the blogging just kind of took back burner.
Yeah. So it seems like content was in your mind. You knew you wanted to make content, and then you kind of molded your strategy about that as things life kind of showed you opportunity. Is that?
Yeah, definitely. It was a lot of checking where am I actually seeing results in the numbers, because I feel like I'm more numbers oriented than I think anything else. So I definitely was watching okay, what are my blog impressions, and what are those, and then what is social media doing, and just seeing the growth there. And it also, for me, visual content is a little bit easier to create and more engaging for me to create than writing. I do love writing, but it takes me a lot more time.
Mm-hmm.
So content is something that I can do quicker, and it's just more more visual. So yeah, I like that about it.
Nice. So how did you land on like travel? Is it does that come from personal interest or like exposure to it because you said you had noticed those blogs, or a combination? How'd you land on travel?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town in Upper Michigan. So after high school, I moved to Green Bay, and that was like my big city move because it's very small where I'm from. And that was my first step into like a different area. And I had traveled like as a kid here and there with my family. I'm one of 5 kids, so family vacations were like a lot. It was very chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
But then I just kind of traveled more in college, like by myself or with friends. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. So it was partially that. And then I knew that I wanted to go to London. That was like my fascination for a long time, like growing up. And I was like, I would just love to go there. And then the opportunity came to go to Scotland. So I was like, that's close. I could go to London if I study in Scotland. So then it was kind of traveling there. And it's just so much easier to travel when you're in Europe that I just traveled a lot more. And then I found that that was something that made me really happy. And like learning about new cultures, learning history of different places is something that can just keep me fascinated for hours. So yeah, just following the passion.
I was talking about that with my wife recently. I think that's something that slips our mind a lot about like how the U.S. is really expansive. And, like even driving East Coast to West Coast takes a long time. And like when you look at the size comparison about all the different things and cultures you can see in Europe very quickly compared to here, at least for me, that slips my mind a lot, thinking like that, access there is a little bit easier, and that's why people spend, that's why backpacking across Europe is a thing, So I want to talk about your experience in Scotland a little bit, because you studied there for an entire year, right?
Yep.
Yeah. What was it like? How do you look back on it? Let's start there. How do you look back on your time studying in Scotland?
It was a very interesting year. So I say that in the frame of I loved studying abroad, and it was the greatest thing that I could have ever done. It was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Like I knew it was going to be hard going there and adjusting. And like I went there and I didn't know anyone in the country. Like I signed up for the program. I did the work for the visa and the funding. And I was so focused on the process of getting there that I didn't like prepare myself for like not being around my friends or family. And like, I was like, I hope it's going to happen. I hope it's going to happen. And then I got there. I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Did I really do this? Where am I? So it was just kind of like I was so focused on the goal that I didn't prepare for like, what are you going to do that you're going to enjoy? So when I got there, it was a lot of just adjusting to being away from everyone and trying to find like friends and people that I could connect with there. So the first like 3 months were a lot harder than I expected them to be. But I definitely grew a lot as a person in that time and found out things that I liked or that I wanted to pursue while I was there. And traveling was a huge part of it. So doing like weekend vacations and things. But the first half of the year was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And then the second half of the year, it was fantastic because I felt like I was settled and like there and ready to experience things and really take advantage of my time there. And then coming back was harder than going there because you're readjusting to things in the US. But yeah, it's wild to step out of your culture and experience something else fully. And then when you finally get settled, you come back and you're like, oh, it's the same, but it's weird now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I look back on it very fondly, and I'm glad that it's something that I did. And I think that if anyone has the opportunity to live abroad, study abroad, work abroad for a short period, that it's life-changing, and you change a lot as a person while you're there. But yeah.
Okay. How was the learning environment different? Was there any like startling or like unexpected like classroom things or learning style things that were difficult?
It was very different. So a little bit more about like my education background. So I went to NWTC when I moved to Green Bay. That was the reason why I moved to Green Bay, was to go to NWTC. So I did like some hospitality classes and shifted into business. And NWTC has a very like hands-on learning approach. Like you're in group projects, you're working together, you're having classroom discussions. It's very interactive. And I loved that about NWTC. And then when I went over to, I was at Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen. When I went there, it's very different in the sense that you have traditional lectures. So you're like sitting there and you're going to lectures, which isn't super abnormal with other places you can go in the US to study, but they had like lectures that you would go to. And then they had, they were like workshop times where you'd have like a more interactive session, but not every class had that. And I also learned very quickly, like at NWTC, you had to be in every class, and you had like some had participation points for showing up. They did not take attendance, and they did not pay attention to if you were in class or not. So if you just didn't go to any of your classes, they didn't know. And it was just like all on you, pass or fail the last exam. Like there was not coursework that you were graded on. Only a couple classes had that. It was my whole first semester that I was there was you pass or fail the exam at the end. That's
Really?
it. Yeah. And that was crazy to me because I'd never been in a class like that. So that was very weird to adjust to. In the second semester, I had a couple I had like a writing project. So that was the whole course was kind of going in for different sections to make sure that you were keeping up with the project. I had one team project the entire year that I was there, which is very different than coursework that I was used to in the US. And that was also very interesting because I was working with a mixed group of some international students and then some Scottish students and just kind of seeing where they were at with the presentation and like some presenting skills. Like I feel like in the US, you have to present in almost every class. Like they want you to be good at public speaking. They want you to be able to communicate ideas. And even if you're super uncomfortable, they're like, presentation day.
Yeah.
And that was not something they were comfortable with because they hadn't had to present things as much as like I had done. So I showed up for the presentation. I was like, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be fun. We had a great project. They were like, can we just read through it like 3 times? And I'm like, okay, yeah, we can do that. But I was very shocked at the difference between like what we're expected to do as US students and what they're expected to do on like a interpersonal skill level.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was very interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, those nuanced differences stacked on top of being completely, a world away from your inner circle, that's a lot to take in and adjust to and navigate through for the first few months. I can see how it would have been difficult.
Yes. Yeah. It was an adjustment.
So did you start your like blogging while you were there?
No, I didn't. I started it after I came back. I was working a very intense job where I was working like 45 to 50 hours a week, and it was in Sturgeon Bay, so I was driving like back and forth every day. So I was just very short on time and just feeling very drained in all aspects of life. So I started the blog as a way for me to like put energy into something that made me happy and that I really enjoyed doing. And that was like what got me through working that job. And I eventually left that job and I liked it when I was in it, but it was just it was not me. So leaving that was really good for me and able to find like what I wanted to do. But yeah, that was its own story. I wish I would have started writing when I was there.
Yeah. More off the top of the head and topical.
Yes.
But, that's interesting. So it started off as somewhat of like an escape or a point of relaxation almost, or like something like that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I needed that. I needed something that I could put like creativity and energy into that wasn't me just living my everyday kind of repetitive, really exhausting life. So yeah.
Yeah.
And that's partially where the name came from. So my blog is called Creative and Ambitious. And that was part of it was I needed somewhere where I could do something creative, whether it was like post photos of a trip or write and do all the things. And then ambitious because everyone was like, why are you doing that?
Nice. Yeah. So Instagram is your main platform, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So Instagram's a tough build. Like as even people are stingy with likes. We've talked about a couple times on the podcast on Instagram. Like it's not like other platforms like, TikTok or Facebook, like they'll click. On Instagram, you have to like earn them more. How did that, you've grown well now. How was it at the beginning? What do you remember back to that?
It was interesting because I think when I started, I was following so many travel pages and I didn't expect it to grow a lot. I was just like, oh, this will be great. I can kind of connect with other people who are doing what I'm trying to do. And I didn't really expect to be so focused on growing the platform. And then as I started to see some growth, I was like, oh, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
So then it was a lot more focusing on that. Yeah, likes are, I mean, it's rough because I follow so many content creators that I've met at different conferences and things now, and you see the work that they put into it, whether it's like the amount of filming it requires and planning and transitions. And like, you can tell when you watch something how much work went into it, and it can flop. And like that part of Instagram is really hard because it's all based on like when you post it, like what you're doing to make sure it's optimized for posting, things like that. Like it's very technical in the sense of like how you can make it successful, but it can be very tolling, especially if you're starting something. You have to be very patient with yourself because play the long game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is a lot of your success right now, like successful posts, is it reels or static posts, or what are you seeing as far as the platform?
My static posts, if they're not carousel posts, like with multiple images people can swipe through, they don't do super well.
Yep.
Reels have always been something that, like, since they came out and I learned how to do reels because I did not know how to do anything with video before that. Video has been a strong strength point in my like content strategy. But honestly, where I see the most engagement is stories. I will post stories and they get people will like in stories, I think, a lot easier than they will on like feed, which doesn't make any sense. But I feel like when you're in stories, you get like the behind the scenes and you feel like it's really coming from that person in real time. So I think people will just sit there and watch stories because it's like a real look in their life or what they're doing. So I get a lot of engagement on stories, which wasn't something I expected.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's part of the reason I experienced the same thing. And I think that's part of the reason why like some of that like produced content isn't like accessed by the people and really, if you want to dig deeper, it's a large reason of why I started the podcast. It's because like, I think our society's in a place where we yearn for a little bit more real. And for a while, like produced stuff did really, really well, like overproduced, and I don't want to confuse that with journalistic, because I think journalistic stuff still does really well. Yeah. But like, the overproduction to catch eyes, I think doesn't work as well as it used to. There was a time and place when it did. But, and in your arena, in your space, that's interesting, right? Because then, it puts a lot of the onus, like it's on you as opposed to your travel, right? Do you feel that at all?
Yeah, it definitely, one thing I've learned is that the more of my personality that I show in things, it does better all the time. And I am definitely more introverted. I can be like social if I want to be, but I'm definitely, I'm naturally more introverted. So doing things like adding in my personality is something that I usually am like very hesitant to do. And the more that I've done it, the better my content has been. So I try to add more of like my humor or my personality into posts. And that seems to be what my audience connects with more than necessarily the travel content.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So now kind of where's your, like, I mean, obviously it's worldwide, you're in Scotland, but like, as far as your content strategy, like where is the bulk? Is it Midwest travel? Is it US travel? And how do you navigate picking where to go? Is it just the places you want to go to?
Yeah, it's a mix. So when I'm planning out my content, it is definitely like what partnerships I have going on that really gears like when I'm posting about where. So if I have a hosted stay, I'm trying to post about that in time. So since I do it as more of like a career, like this is part of my business, I have to work with those kind of deadlines too. So it's a mix between like, what haven't I posted? What is in my calendar for partnerships that I have to meet on deadlines? And then, I mean, a lot of my travel personally is where I want to go. So trying to work in more of like what I want to show people. So it's different every month for sure. And it's just geared towards like where I am, where I'm trying to go, things like that. So,
yeah. How was it developing business side of it? Because there's a lot of people that were in your shoes and say, I love traveling. I want to be a travel blogger. Like I want to go here and here. And if I take pictures, like people are going to dig it. But how was it coming along with the business side of it? Like you talk about partnerships, you had somebody approach you to write a book. When you start to think about, I don't know if you're monetized on any platforms, but that's a whole nother thing. Yep. Like how was it, and how did the business side come along other than just like throwing yourself into the fire,
Yeah. The business side was a lot harder than starting posting. It definitely was. 'Cause you kind of almost need somewhat of a platform to be able to provide proof that you're doing it seriously and you're taking it seriously and that you want the work. So it kind of is like you have to put so much into it in order to be able to do it at some point. So I feel like I was lucky in the sense that I didn't ever think that it would become that when I started. So I was like, oh, let me just post all these things that I love and connect with people. So I think that was easier in helping me grow my audience. And then from there, I was able to start going. Honestly, where I learned more of the business skills was going to conferences, like in-person conferences, and learning from other travel creators, because I did not know what I was doing. And no matter how many times you Google something, you still might not get the right answer because you're getting all of these different ideas, and learning from people who have like proven success in that has made such a huge difference. So I go to 2 travel conferences every year at least.
And it's all just travel influencers that go?
Travel influencers, content creators, photographers, people who write for like traditional media outlets will go to. So it's like a big mix of anyone in the travel space. So one of them that I go to is the Women in Travel Summit. And that is any women creators in any capacity. Some destinations will send people there too, to kind of like meet and network with creators and things. So that is one that I go to. It's been so helpful. And also I think that if you're trying to make it a business, it can get very lonely and isolating because you're working so hard at something and everyone else in your life is like, what are you doing and why? And they don't quite get it. But when you find your community of creators who understand it and know what you're trying to do, they also have connections that you don't have. So like building your network of creator friends is super important to be able to scale it into a business. The other one that I go to is the Midwest Travel Writers Network. Or the Midwest Travel Network. So that is full of writers, more content creators now, but when they started, it was a lot of writers and bloggers. That one has been great for growing my business because as I'm based in the Midwest, it's easier for me to travel back and forth to partnerships and get partnerships once I know different destinations to work with. So I would say that one's been super helpful for like a sense of actually meeting destinations to work with.
Sure.
But yeah, there's a lot to it.
That's one thing I've noticed about that industry. It seems like, anyway, from the outside looking in, it seems like each other are supportive of each other. It's a lot like podcasters. Like a lot of podcasters will like boost each other up and like, share, subscribe, all the stuff, right? Is that how that industry is too?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely is. And I think it's because like they know how hard you're working and they know what you're putting into it when it might not look to other people in your life like they might not get what you're doing or why you're spending all your time on Instagram or on your phone. They're just like, can you just be here in the moment? And I'm like, I'm working. Mm-hmm. And it might not be something that they understand as easily. So definitely having that group to support you it's game changing.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, to a lot of people, their perspective is probably immediately risk, right? Like there's a lot of risk. I met a dude recently, actually. I was at training camp, Packers training camp, and I met a dude that left his job. He was working in K-12 like school and left his job to become like a Packer content creator. So he hosts like live stuff about like, that's why I met him at training camp. He's like, I went to training camp to like relax a little bit and see the players, and he's like writing in his notebook the entire time. And that's the difference, right? Like he left a solid gig to like try to do something he's passionate about, It's fascinating. It's fascinating to like think through. And I think a lot of people just pass that by, like in their mind, because it's not grasped immediately. It's like, that's just what Sarah's doing now. She's probably got some other job too, but nope, like this is it. So, the business side was tough to learn. So how did, the conference thing is interesting to me to think about that. Like how big are they when you go to these things? Like how many people are at these?
It depends on which one you're going to. Some of them are massive.
Like thousands or hundreds?
I would say the biggest one that I know of is about 1,000.
Okay.
The one that I go to, it's hard because they're different. They're in different locations every year, which is really cool because then you get to travel to new places.
Yep.
And all the travel conferences are like kind of split. So there's like about half the day is sessions and half is going out and exploring the area. So I love them. They're fantastic. But since they're in different areas and different locations, you never know what the conference attendance is going to be because it depends on like travel schedules also. Because obviously every travel creator is traveling frequently. So it's kind of a toss-up, but I would definitely say like the Midwest Travel Network is probably like between 150 to 200. It's a little bit smaller, but the connections that I make at that one are much more worth my time than some of the other ones because they're local. They're local to the Midwest. They're in my region. They're places that my audience would want to go to. So finding the right conference is also really important.
Mm-hmm.
The Women in Travel Summer is fantastic, and I want to say they probably had 600 people. Don't quote me on it because I don't know numbers, but probably 600 this past year. It's different every time, but massive groups of people.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So is that like, I'm assuming that is what opened the door to the book, right? Was it at a conference or did they reach out to you because of your content? How did the book opportunity get to you?
I still don't for sure know. So
Nice.
So I started going to the conferences because they found my Instagram and they were like, hey, we have some spots open. We'll give you a ticket if you can be here for the conference. It's like in 3 weeks or whatever. So that was the first one that I went to, was just because they found my Instagram under Midwest Travel. So I went to the first conference so the Midwest Travel Network, they have a like page where you can see all of the Midwest creators. So it's almost like a place where you can put your bio for anyone who's looking for writers or photographers or content creators. So my bio is on there, and I think that might be where they found me. Because I know a lot of other Midwest travel writers that have written books through this publisher. But when they reached out to me, they just said that they saw my blog online and had read some of the things that I wrote, and they thought that I would be a good fit and that they needed a Green Bay writer.
Gotcha.
So I don't know for sure. The conference that I went to before they reached out about this book, I was in an elevator with a bunch of people, and I was like, yeah, I want to write a Green Bay book, but I don't know when, and I don't know how yet. Before this even happened, I knew I wanted to write a Green Bay book because as a travel writer, I think that I should know everything in my area. Mm-hmm. Like I should be a local expert on travel if I want to then highlight other places. Like from a personal standpoint, I had a bucket list for Green Bay before I even thought about writing a book. So I knew that there were things that I wanted to highlight. And in the elevator, I was like, yeah, like I have my bucket list. We're working through it. And then we just kind of kept walking, and I was walking with a couple people in the front, and they were like, well, have you thought about like self-publishing or working with a publisher? I was like, I don't know. It's like back burner right now. And then they reached out in probably like a couple months after that, and I was like, who is in the elevator?
Manifestation. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah. So you had the list. That's a great mindset to have. That's I think, for some that maybe find it a bit more difficult and maybe like don't look at it as such of a job or a career. Yeah. I think that might be a missing link, a missing piece, but that's a really great way to look at it. Like if I'm going to tell people what they should do in their town, I should know what to do in my town. I wouldn't have thought about it like that, but that's awesome. Yeah. So, without giving like too many secrets away in the book, like I want to talk about a few things in there. Okay. Like you don't have to tell us what number 1 is, but maybe like number 3.
Well, that's something that I actually get a lot is people think that it's written like 1 to 100.
Oh, and it's not ranked?
It's not. Thank God, because it would have been so hard to rank them. That would have been so hard.
Yeah.
It's like split into 5 different sections. So there's food and drink, there's arts and entertainment, culture and history, shopping and fashion, and then sports and recreation. So they're kind of in separate chunks. So I tried to put about 20 in each of those sections to make sure that our area was represented in the sense that there were as many shopping places as there were culture and history. So I tried to keep it as a balance. Some of them have a couple more because I love food. So that was a really hard section to write. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit more packed into that section. But yeah, there's roughly 20 in each one. Some have a little bit more, some have a little bit less. But yeah, I just kind of tried to focus on the category, making sure that that part of our city was represented well enough and showing that there are things in Green Bay for everyone.
Can we dig into the culture and history section a little bit? What are a couple things in there that maybe like even like deeper things that maybe even a lot of locals don't know about, or like just things that you think particularly shine a light on Green Bay?
Yeah, the culture and history section was one of the sections that I started with first because I was like, I need to not think about food and drink yet. We need to get some more progress
Otherwise I'll just go to lunch.
Because it was so hard for me to choose the food and drink that I was like, that's going to be back burner for now. We're going to focus on something else that you know that you can finish so you feel like you're making progress. So I focused on the culture and history, and I had my bucket list. There were some of the things on there that I hadn't made it to, because I feel like when you're living here, you're so in your personal daily life that it's hard to be like, oh yeah, I should go to that one historical site and learn those things. If it's not in your schedule, it's not in your routine, it's hard to be like, oh yeah. So I had some things on that list that I hadn't been to yet. I was like, you need to get there now. But one of the things that I did was I went to the Hazelwood Historic House, and that was fascinating because I didn't know anything about that. I had heard of it, and I'm not from the area, so like I know that it's more popular for like school age groups to do tours to different local areas and things. Since I didn't grow up here, I had not been to any of those places. So I went there and I had a fantastic tour. Their tours are by volunteers, and the volunteer I had just did a fantastic job of sharing all the history, and you walk through this historic house and she has information of everything in the house. And it was fascinating to learn like the local ties to the house, the like artifacts and things that they have. It was really cool.
So I live here and I don't even know what it is.
Oh my gosh, go there.
I don't know what it is. I'm assuming it's on Hazelwood.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's they do tours in the summer, or you can request like a different tour time. You just have to email their like volunteer email, and then someone will volunteer to come and do a tour. The email is written in the book. Nice. So if you want to do a tour, it's in there.
Dig it.
But yeah, that was fantastic. I highly recommend that for anyone who's a local that might have things that they haven't checked out. That's one of them that I definitely recommend.
So without giving like too much of it away, is it like, did someone famous live there, or it's just a famous home of Green Bay?
Yeah, well, it's a historic home, so it was from one of the first like prominent families that was in Green Bay. So it's a lot about like the settlers that came to this area. So there's a lot of history of like when Green Bay was forming, what like that family did and their influence on the area and kind of how they helped it to grow.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very cool.
like something like that. Like when I heard the title of your book and I saw some of your like LinkedIn content around it, I think a lot of people's natural reaction is to think about what would my 100 be.
Yeah.
And then I very quickly came to the realization that like I'm one of those people that like I'm the opposite of what you were. Like you said, I want to know everything about my local community before I write about yours. Like there's probably so many places I haven't seen or know of in Green Bay. And I think that's probably why the series of book does pretty well, because I think there's baked in audience that like a lot of people from Green Bay are probably going to buy your book. Because
I hope so.
yeah. Well, like just hearing that one thing that you brought up that I've never even heard of, and I could probably read it and there's probably 70 things in there that I don't know of that, you know, that you did. Super interesting to me. So that's in the history and culture section. Maybe like one other thing. What else sticks out from that section that you remember writing about?
I really liked writing that section, so it's hard for me to choose ones.
Focused on it now?
Which one should I choose? I did put the Mulva Cultural Center in there, and that's a newer addition to our area. When you write a book, it's really hard to choose things because you have to make sure you're choosing things that are going to stay around and be there forever, because you can't edit a book once it's printed unless you do a second edition. And that was hard for me as a blogger, knowing that I can go in and edit any blog article to make it accurate. A book, once it's published, it's like, can't make any changes now. So I did try and like choose a balance between like what is new, what is going to be around, what's been around forever. So trying to find a mix of those things. But the Cultural Center was something that I went and toured. I reached out to their marketing. I was like, hi, I'd like to just learn about this because I'm writing this book and I think it might be a good fit. So I went in and I had a tour of the facility. And it blew my mind. The amount of things that they have there that are like special to that facility only. Like the building process is one thing that I learned a lot about. That's not as much in the book. You'll have to go there and check that out. But like the architecture of the building, the kind of different like collections that they bring in is really focused on bringing things to our area that haven't been in our area, which is really cool because with a facility that does rotating displays, they can bring so much in that our community wouldn't have otherwise. So that's really cool. And part of the reason why I was really excited to put them in the book is because they have a combination. They have a theater where they have like more documentary style things. You can go in and actually watch films there. They have the rotating collections that they do. And then they have a gallery in the atrium. And the gallery in the atrium is free all the time. So I really liked that they had an emphasis on making art and culture accessible for our community, even if they have some things that are paid. That atrium is always going to be available to families, to anyone who walks in. You can see the atrium exhibit anytime for free. Yeah. So I liked that they were putting access as a priority for their institution. So that one's in the book.
Yeah. So the food and culture section, I'm a huge Mexican food fan. Is there a section about where to find the best taco in Green Bay? Food and drink was really hard. I've considered writing just a food and drink book because there's so many great restaurants. I tried when I was writing the food and drink to do as many variety of types of foods. So there's only one Mexican restaurant listed, which I feel bad because there's so many in our area that are great, but I had to choose one. So that was really hard for me too, because when you know that people are doing things great and you know that people should hear about it and go to them, it's hard to do something like this where you're choosing a list. So I just kind of tried to choose separate things. So like one winery or I did a wine bar and then wine bars and wineries and then like craft beer. And I chose an Italian place and like trying to separate out the types of cuisine. That made it a little bit easier to write, but not by much. Yeah. Yeah, I can only imagine that the wrestle between what to put in, because I'm guessing, did you have like a page restriction that they gave you? Like they probably wanted it under X amount of pages, right?
Yep, I had a page restriction. I had a word count restriction. I had like the formatting is so specific to this series. I had to follow that, and with this being my first book, I kind of liked that because I was like, well, I can't get too carried away on specifics because half of it is structured and I can't change it. So it will get finished and it will be what they want it to be. And it won't kind of, hang out there a while. I think a lot of people try and write a book and then they finish it or they finish parts of it. And then they're like, but what if I don't like it? What if I have to change this thing? And there's so many questions that you can ask yourself in that process that can just delay it. I'm guilty of this with a lot of the writing that I do. That's why it takes me longer to write.
Reservations or self-doubt. There's all that stuff that creeps in.
Yes. So I liked that this was so structured because I knew that I had those, like, I can't write over this amount of word count. I have to, keep to this kind of structure of the book. So it made it an easier first book to write in my very limited book writing experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you enjoy it? Would you do it? Would you write another book?
I think I would. My mom actually told me, she's like, if you ever write another book, I don't want to be anywhere near you. I was like, wasn't that bad?
Well, thanks, Mom.
Like, yeah, I don't want to be near me either because it was a rough 3 months.
Was that from like putting a lot of pressure on yourself about it? A lot of times when we do, when you're tackling something for the first time that's unfamiliar, I think a lot of overthinking can be driven by that, like self-doubt or that, like some people call it imposter syndrome, whatever it is, like overthinking, and then that generally doesn't lead to positive outcomes, Yeah, it definitely, the overthinking is something that is hard when you're doing a project like this. And for me, this is the craziest part for me because I had to work through this, but I put content out all the time on my blog, on my Instagram. For some reason, doing a physical book was like overwhelming to me. So I was like, this isn't just something that if someone finds my page and they know me, they're going to see it. Like, this is something people can walk into a bookstore and see and they know nothing about me, but they could judge it based on what's
in here and what's not in here. And that was hard for me because I was like, I'm trying to represent our community in the best way possible, but I'm also only one voice and one person. So trying to make sure that it was Green Bay focused and not just me, and knowing that I could potentially be seen by a lot more people in a bigger scope, I was like, what am I doing? And I had a lot of friends that were like, isn't that what you want? Isn't that what you've been trying to do with your blog and your Instagram? I was like, yeah, but it's different. They're on Instagram. They're like, no, it's not. Those are still people. Yeah. It's not different. So
yeah. Well, that's really cool. Would you like? I don't know how to word the question. Like what? Well, first, did you have anybody like try to schmooze you to get their stuff into the book that knew you were writing it?
I wish they would have. I really wish they would have. It would have made my job easier. I'd be like, yes, you can be in it. Done. No one tried that.
I guess it's probably the cat really wasn't out of the bag. Like probably not many people knew you were writing the book, but I mean, if they had the inside information, like you gotta think there's some.
They could have been in the book.
Value. Yeah. When you were like finding things to put in there, did you find anything you hadn't done or been to, and like, by proxy of having to do that, find like a little hidden gem like the Hazelwood House or something like that?
That is a great question. I am trying to think if I have anything that was like new. I had a pretty intense bucket list that I had been working on compiling. Anytime I would hear anything new about Green Bay that I hadn't been to, it went on this list. So it's still massive. There are still things that I haven't done on the bucket list that I'm trying to keep doing, but I had a deadline.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll let me write a second edition eventually in the future that I can, improve it too. But yeah, there's so much in our area that I feel like now that the book is out, even I'm still more like,
what does the series call that? Do they call that another 100 things to do in Green Bay before you die? That's what I would do if it was mine.
There would only be the 100 things to do, and then they have like different versions of that. So there's 100 things to do in Wisconsin too. Okay. That book's already been written. No, I know the writer who did that one, and it's good. But they wouldn't do another book like this. It would be a second edition, so it would have to be edits on the first one.
Gotcha. Yeah. If like a restaurant closes or like the Hazelwood House burns down or something like that.
Yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that sounds like a gem. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, but they do have like an Eats and Eateries series. They have other versions where I could write more for Green Bay, which hopefully I will eventually. I don't know. Everything's kind of a little chaotic with doing things for the book.
Well, that's kind of the space you're in, right? That's all I like between what I do for a job and doing this and my interest of social media. Like I run across a lot of content creators and people who do that. And I think that's a common theme in that is that you can't really predict a ton. You have to be comfortable at like one, recognizing opportunity and knowing when to say yes. And then another thing, kind of just being comfortable in that chaos. Like, tomorrow's probably not going to go exactly how you plan it, but like you might run across an awesome situation that is going to provide you an excellent piece of content. And you might go into something the opposite of that, thinking it's going to be great, and then end up getting, 42 views on something and like one like, so I think that's, that's just a word to the wise to people in your industry is don't try to plan too much. You got to be comfortable in that.
Yeah. I just kind of have like a big list of like all of the things I want to do. And then I just try and pick one to focus on at a time to make it happen. Because there's so much that you can do. And I think one thing, like you have to be comfortable with flexibility and risk. There's a lot of risk in what I do because my income relies on what I'm doing. And like, there are some ways that I can make it more stable, but it's a lot of like, what partnerships am I getting? How are book sales doing? Like, it's very much, you have to have different streams of income too, to be able to stabilize it somewhat. But you have to be comfortable with risk. You have to be comfortable with flexibility and changing what you're doing because like, there's so much changes in social media almost daily of like, what is now recommended or what you should be doing now. And there's always new platforms that you can try and new techniques you can try. And if you focus on all of that, you probably are going to take a break from creating because you're trying to learn all the things you should be doing, when really you should just be doing, like, putting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's easy to get overwhelmed by the possibilities of the new shiny things, but doing what you know is working, and you have to change in some ways, but being able to keep your messaging consistent, like still sharing and being led by what you're passionate about and what brings you joy. So it's a constant trying to balance those things of like, what can I add in that's new? What isn't going to kill me to add in? Because you have to constantly be learning the new thing in order to keep up with it. And you don't have to do all the new things, but you have to know what it is, and you have to know what the benefits are, and you have to analyze what move you're going to make for your business. So it's a lot to kind of balance between those things.
Yeah, I could throw my hand way up in the air for someone that gets like distracted by the new shiny toy in social media, and then I end up like trying to make content around trying to use it, and that's not the most efficient thing to do, but it's like it just looks so fun, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Are you on other platforms? I follow you on Instagram. What other platforms do you do regularly?
I would say mainly I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I do have Facebook. I have like a Facebook page, and then I share stuff from my personal one too. And I did create a Facebook group for things to do in Green Bay, which is new.
Okay.
So I'll be sharing more Green Bay specific stuff in there. I'm on Pinterest. I think as a blogger, Pinterest, you have to be on Pinterest. Mm-hmm. I guess you don't have to be, but I highly recommend that you be on Pinterest. I'm on LinkedIn a lot more these days. And then TikTok. I'm on TikTok. I'm not super consistent on TikTok. We're working on that one, but I'm there.
That's kind of the great thing about TikTok is with their algorithm, you don't have to be consistent on TikTok. Like there's these weird rules that everybody has, you know, you need to post 2 times a day, blah, blah, blah. I haven't noticed that on TikTok. I have the most random things. Like I had a TikTok that I posted on our Rooted Wisconsin page that had nothing to do with the podcast. I was at a golf tournament, and it was just this random video that ended up with, I think it's at like 600,000 views. And then I did kind of along your line. I went to a concert down in Madison, did this awesome, like produced like 1.5-minute thing of this show I went to at a really cool venue. And that's got like 800, you know?
Yeah.
like TikTok is I think it's a good thing about TikTok too, is that it is a crapshoot. And like, you know, that recently, this was probably something you delved into, that Instagram went through that whole thing about how like accounts or creators with less followers weren't going to be like down in the algorithm like they had been. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen the change yet, but that I'll rest on my laurels on that for a minute. But now I got thinking about Instagram and how I think they lied to us, and I forgot what my point was.
It's easy to get distracted by that.
Yeah,
it's a thought always in there.
In comparison to TikTok, like I think anybody at any time, if you get some cool content on TikTok, could go uber viral, and I'm not sure that's always the case with Instagram or even Facebook.
Yeah, I have a couple. So anytime I start a new social media, I like go into that social media and I'm like, okay, we got to build up the bare minimum of like having a presence there without it taking up all of my time and creating, you know, energy. So when I started TikTok, I did a couple random videos trying to just put out some Midwest content. And I did one on Manitowoc and Two Rivers, just like a little video of things to do. And it shows up in Google results. So people, if they're looking for things to do, they'll find that video. And I had one of my sister's friends was moving to that area. And she's like, I saw your video from my Google search. And I was like, what? So I think some of those pop up in that way, which is kind of wild. And I have one video from St. Louis that's just like me, like some really pretty pans of like the hotel we were in. And I went up in like the arch. So I have like a view from up above. That video just continuously, people still find it and save it. And I'm like, it's not even like a meaty piece of content where there's like, I'm listing what there is to do. It's just like a here's St. Louis. And they love that one. So I don't know, TikTok is its own thing, but I'm thankful that some of my videos, you know, they take off there, but yeah.
I love that about TikTok. It's like you can post something and have no idea how it's going to do.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. But LinkedIn's an awesome place for content. I think LinkedIn's an untapped resource for a lot of people. Like, you know, a lot of people don't think it fits like their content or their shtick or whatever it may be, but you can make it. I think LinkedIn's really and especially like, man, with your book and stuff like that, I'm sure it was a good outlet for that.
Yeah. And I definitely, so my brand is a little bit different depending on the platform that it's on. So whether I'm using like blog content on Pinterest or I'm doing like my more lifestyle, like pretty travel stuff on Instagram, LinkedIn is more where I will post like career things. So I'm posting like if I've finished a program, if I'm doing book events, if I'm doing anything where I've worked with this tourism board. I use it more as like lead generation of I've done this work with this tourism board in hopes that more tourism boards will see that I'm an active creator and I'm working and doing things. So I do it more of I'm posting these things as a resource and more using it like putting portfolio type pieces on LinkedIn. So I think it's using LinkedIn where it's going to benefit your brand or your business the most. I think a lot of people on LinkedIn that I see are posting like a lot of do all these things with your business.
Yeah.
And I'm like, or you can go to St. Louis and see this. So I feel like I'm a nice little distraction where I'm not telling you what to do with your business, but I'm telling you what I'm doing with mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The classic like LinkedIn post of like, this happened in my day yesterday. Here's what it taught me. 7 bullet points about like, now I'm more patient. Now I know I need to learn something new, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think that's kind of auto scroll at this point for a lot of people. Man. So it sounds like food and food's a big part. You like food content.
Love food content.
Okay. So we got to talk about Green Bay food then. Someone's coming to Green Bay for a weekend trip. What are the 2 places that they need to go out to dinner?
Oh, that's hard.
Very hard.
I hate having to choose food places because I love all of them. And it's really hard for me to put the ones out. I would ask follow-up questions. I would be like, is it their first time in Green Bay?
Let's say
are they like a weekender, like they come here often?
Someone from Wisconsin, but not from Green Bay. Let's say it's a family of 4. They're going to come to Green Bay and they're staying, they're going to do like the water park, Tundra Lodge thing, but they want to go out to eat 2 different places.
Okay. Family of 4. I don't have kids. I have 2 nephews and a niece. So I do go out to dinner with like family style sometimes, but I definitely go out to dinner more with like friends, meeting people for coffee, things like that. But for a family of 4, I do have 2. I have 2.
Okay.
Al's Hamburgers.
Okay.
It's just the cutest place. I love it so much. And they have great milkshakes. And I've brought like my nephews there and they loved it. So I've been there with like, if I'm with my friend and she's with her cousins, I'm like, I know where we're going. So I like to bring kids there because it's different than what they would normally experience because it has like a retro feel to it. Food's great. So I definitely always recommend Al's Hamburgers. And then I really like going to St. Brennan's when I'm with family. So St. Brennan's is like Irish food, but they have a beautiful dining area. They have stained glass all the way around their dining area. So it's stunning. But the servers there are great with kids. Like there's plenty of space. And if the kids like doing something weird and they're dropping fries and stuff, their server's like, oh, it's fine. We're happy they're here. So I really like bringing kids there because they make you feel very welcome. Irish hospitality.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, secret of mine, I've never had Al's Hamburgers.
What?
I've never been.
What are we doing? We should be going there right now.
Probably should be. Yeah, I've never had it. I know it's like a Green Bay staple. It's been there forever, right? Like it's a long time.
Yeah.
And it's weird because it is a place that I'm drawn to it aesthetically because of the weird like white and red. Like I've just never been there. I'm gonna have to make it a point to though.
It's great. I also like that they do late night service on like I think it's Friday and Saturday. Don't quote me on hours.
Well, their location probably demanded that.
Yes,
yeah.
Super. They just have a window that they open super late night, probably from like I don't know 1 to 2, something like that. Mm-hmm. Great food. If you're out with friends, grab Al's Hamburgers then too.
Nice. So let's same question for like a mid-20s no kids couple that comes to Green Bay to go to their first Packer game.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's my market.
There you go. Yep.
And for a wine bar.
Okay.
They have great wine, but their food is fantastic. Always fantastic. And then the second one, I have two. I'm not going to pick one. It's either, if they're looking for like a nice dinner out, Republic Chop House, fantastic. You can't go wrong going there. Or Angelina's. Their pasta is fantastic. Every time I go there, it's fantastic. And I've been to Italy 3 times. And I mean, the pasta there is fantastic, but the pasta at Angelina's is the closest that I can find in the U.S. that is like Italian pasta.
Yeah.
So go to Angelina's. It's great.
Nice. Yeah, we went there. It was last summer or the summer before. I can't remember. What is it? What, you probably know what Green Bay calls that when there's like, it's like all different, like different restaurants will have a different special during, I think it's a week. Is it just restaurant week? Is that what it's called or something like that?
Yeah, I feel like you're probably thinking of Restaurant Week, but like on Broadway and downtown Green Bay do different things that are like food centric and focused.
Okay.
So they do some events where you can go around. There's like an international food one that they normally do.
Okay.
I guess I shouldn't say normally. They've done it a few times and it's great and you can go to all of the different places in the area, but
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was some type of event that we went to Angelina's for the first time, and it was really enjoyable. I loved
really nice.
We sat in like that outdoor like back patio. It was super quaint and just a nice spot.
Yeah, it's beautiful there.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I appreciate you coming in and chatting about the book for a little bit and your influencer career. I love the chaos of it. I think it's great. Are you in the middle of that? Are you loving the chaos? Are you becoming accustomed to it a couple years in now, or somewhere in between?
Great question. The book has thrown off my year. My year is very weird because of that, because I was working a part-time job and then I left that job because I knew I had to write the book in a very accelerated timeline. Because when they reached out to me and they said they want 100 Things Green Bay, I was like, okay, I will write it, but I want it out before the draft. So then I had to work backwards with publishing deadlines. And I was like, well, I don't want to take a chance of it going to print late. So it has to be the cycle before that. And then before I knew it, they're like, okay, it's due in March. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. Next 3 months are going to be rough. So a lot of my time and energy was just trying to figure out how to finish this, less on my like income generating things, because I knew that this had to be done and this was a priority for me. So that kind of put me in a weird spot where now I'm working on my travel partnerships for the year and we're halfway through the year. So it has very much delayed what my typical year would look like. I've done quite a bit of traveling this year. I always squeeze in the travel, but yeah, it's definitely kind of, my priorities have changed this year as opposed to other ones, because I also now have like book events, press appearances and things like that for the book. So also scheduling those in while also trying to schedule in my travel content is like a interesting game. It's like Tetris.
Yeah. Yeah, scheduling it all. How did the book release event at the Tarleton go, by the way?
It was good. It was a really nice. I loved having the event there, and I really wanted to have the event there because they focus on like giving local entertainers, performers like a shot.
Is that in the book?
So,
is the Tarleton in
the
book?
Okay, yeah, they're in the book. Yeah. Which was another reason I had gone to interview them for like more information about it. You can find things online about it, but I like going in to try and interview people because you maybe learn some more things, or you get a more feel for like I want to say like the soul, but that sounds kind of cheesy, but like you understand more where the passion is in that business. Yep. So when I went to go interview Tarl at the Tarleton, he was talking about how they really want to be the theater where people will come and show their art or show their skill to the world. So I was like, first book, I would love to do it there. So yeah, it was really nice to have the event there. We did a silent auction for the Historic West Fund, which is a fund that helps preserve the theater and its history. And the theater itself is turning 100 years this year.
Oh, nice.
So it was cool to have the 100 Things book at the Tarleton that's turning 100 years old. So it was a very cool event. I had a lot of people come out for the book, but I also had live music. So I had Fairy Astronaut, which is a local band that came and played. So it was really cool to have something that was super specific to the book and like local art and putting it out there. So
yeah, that is really a local little gem. The Tarleton is awesome. Like a couple times we've been to they just call it like Saturday morning cartoons.
Oh, cartoon brunch.
Yeah. Cartoon brunch. Yeah. Like we bring River there and like eat this excellent brunch that you wouldn't expect and watch like these old, like last time we were there, it was the old Mickey Mouse, like
that's awesome.
And like, who can make that happen and keep it going? That's definitely a local gem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that went well. And, I hope the book, I'm sure you're going to sell a ton of copies. How does that even work when you get a contract? Like, do you know how many they sell? Is that something you can track, like your numbers from you were talking earlier?
Yes and no. So I get a monthly sales report from the publisher showing like where things have gone, which has been helpful in knowing like where the book is sold, because people keep asking me, and I'm like, it's on my website. So it's on my website, but then it's also in some of the local stores and things now. And it's in the Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble. Yeah.
I was really excited about that.
Yeah.
That I went in, so the book came out on the 1st. My birthday is July 10th. So I didn't go because I was like, I don't even know if they're going to have the book yet. Like, I don't know shipping, how long it'll take, if they're going to have it on the shelf yet. And my best friend was like, no, we're going in there and checking. And I was like, okay, fine, we'll go in. It's my birthday, but fine. And we go in and it's on the shelf and she's like, here, sign it. I was like, just like in the aisle like this? I feel like I'm doing something wrong. And she's like, no, just do it. You wrote the book. No one can yell at you. I was like, well, they could. They could yell at me.
It turns out it's not my Barnes and Noble.
Right? So I like signed the first one and I put it back on the shelf and I'm like, oh, this is great. And I was like, I should ask about doing a book signing here. So I bring the book up to the desk. It's like, hi, I'd like to talk about possibly doing a book signing. She's like, well, if we carry the book, we could probably do that. I was like, yeah, this is yours. It's from your shelf.
Nice.
And then they're like, oh, you're here and it's in our store? She's like, we're finding every copy and then you can sign every copy. So I signed 19 books at Barnes & Noble on my birthday, which was a very special moment as like seeing it somewhere. It was like a bigger name. It was a very cool, I don't think I'll beat that birthday anytime soon, but it was a very cool moment.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you the best of continued luck. Hopefully everything keeps to continue to grow how you want it to. And happenstance is a good thing. Just keep saying yes, you know?
Yeah.
Come up. Well, I appreciate you coming in and chatting. It was fun to get to know a little bit more about you in the book. And hopefully we'll talk soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Sarah.